Hey everyone, welcome to our very first Q&A on the channel. Before we begin, I just want to say how grateful I am for all of you who have supported us this far and have helped us get here. I have collected a total of 24 questions that I will be answering today, so let's get started. Our first question is, how old is Mango? And Mango is just over 2 years old. Say hi! Was he hand-fed? Yes, he was hand-fed. At the very start of the channel, I posted a short video on how I came to care for Mango, which will be linked in the description and the top right corner of the screen. So for those of you who haven't watched it, Mango's parents were our first green pair of budgies to successfully breed, but unfortunately, after a couple weeks went by, 2 of the 3 babies had passed away and only 1 bird was left. That was Mango, and at the time, his parents had completely stopped going into their nesting box to feed him. From there, I decided to take him inside and brought some baby parrot formula for him. I didn't have an incubator or anything and used a mixture of my own body heat and a couple of rice stalks, which seemed to work really well. He had to be fed every few hours, and whenever he would hear me walking to his little wooden box, he'd make his little baby bird call so that I'd feed him. While it was a very time-consuming responsibility, it was a great experience for me, especially because I've always wanted a bird that would be my friend. Okay, moving on. The next question is, how did you come up with the name Mango? Well, I actually didn't come up with the name right away, but when I felt like it was time to stop calling him the baby bird, or whatever other nicknames he had, my family and I decided to stick with the foods and fruits theme, and therefore Mango was just another name that we hadn't used yet. Little did I know, Mango was a very popular bird name. How did you teach him to talk? Teaching Mango to talk kind of just happened one day. Once he had gotten all of his feathers and could fly and everything, there were a few phrases we would continuously repeat, like "gimme kiss," for example. Every time someone would interact with him up close, the desired phrase would be said multiple times in a row, and eventually Mango caught on and started repeating us. In the beginning, he'd pretty much mumble things, but then he came to practice them on his own. Alright, so an extremely common question that has been asked on a lot of videos is, what is on Mango's head? Is he okay? And although I've answered numerous times, I thought it might be good to say it in a video where people will see me. Anyways, the answer is yes, he is fine. Sometimes he will be playing with his toys and ends up regurgitating to them while I'm at school, letting the food get on his head. Yes, it's gross, and it's really annoying when he does it. Another common question that many people have asked me is, will Mango ever get a mate? This took me a lot of thinking and consideration of the outcomes, but I'm sorry to say that he will not get one. I don't want to get into too much detail, but I'd rather not have to deal with all of the hormones that are involved with bird breeding. And plus, I don't want to risk losing my bond that I already have with Mango. This leads us to the next question about whether or not budgies require companionship with another bird. I personally can't give a definitive answer on this one because it all depends on the situation. If you're a person who isn't home the majority of the day, it's probably best for the budgie to have a friend so that they don't get lonely. However, on the other hand, if you know that you can carve plenty of time out of your day for your budgie, then it may not be as necessary to get another one. As someone who goes to school, I make sure I spend enough time with Mango once I get home. That mainly includes letting him fly around my room, foraging for food, or practicing his words with me. Now here's a question that made me laugh, so I said, why not answer it on here? Can you paint Mango's toenails? No, you cannot and should not ever paint a bird's toenails. Not only do they have super sensitive respiratory systems, but they may also eat the polish, containing who knows how many chemicals. Either way, that would not be a great idea. Next is, what is the difference between budgies and parakeets? To keep this as simple as possible, budgies are always parakeets, but parakeets aren't always budgies. The terms are often used interchangeably, but the definition of a parakeet is any small parrot. Why do birds get pinfeathers and how do they work? Quite a while back, I posted this video of Mango's pinfeathers and so many people were asking what they were, how they work, and why birds get them. Pinfeathers show up on any bird that is molting or shedding their feathers. Budgies usually molt a few times a year, and when they do, you can see these pointy white feathers covered in keratin all over their body. The covers basically keep the new feathers safe until the budgie rubs them off. If you're a bird owner and feel like your bird needs help, all you have to do is gently massage the area, and if the feather feels flaky, it will come off. but be very careful as these pinfeathers can hurt or irritate them very easily. Okay, how are you able to take care of so many pets, and how did your parents allow you to have all of them? Honestly, it's like a gradual increase over time. My first pet that was completely my responsibility was my leopard gecko Sunset, who I've had for about 5 years now. Then we were also breeding budgies, which I'll talk about later. For me, pets are like a hobby that loves you back, and that has allowed me to prioritize them over other things. In reality though, it's important to get one pet at a time to make sure that you can actually fulfill their needs. Usually, getting a new pet would require some begging towards my parents, but it's good to note that not every family is the same when it comes to getting a bunch of pets. What advice would you give for people considering having multiple pets? For those of you considering having multiple pets, like I said, make sure that you place them in your utmost priorities, have done extensive research on their care, and lastly, make sure that you can afford anything that they may cost you, whether that's vet bills, food, toys, equipment, etc. What is in the tank behind him? This question is referring to this video here, and that is my leopard gecko Sunset that I mentioned earlier. What is your biggest pet peeve about having birds? I guess my biggest pet peeve about having birds would be when people get a bird and either don't give it enough space to fly or don't let it out of its cage at all. And this is me speaking from experience, because we used to have our outdoor birds in an old rabbit cage, which worked until they started breeding. And then we had all of these birds in a small cage, and you could tell that they were unhappy. Once my dad built the new aviary that we have now, the birds can fly and feel less enclosed. What are some common misunderstandings about budgies as pets? To my surprise, apparently not many people know that budgies can mimic words. It makes sense though, given that they're such small birds, you don't tend to think of them much as parrots unless you have them. The second misunderstanding is that budgies aren't messy and are easy maintenance. And that is not true. Budgies are messy when it comes to almost everything. Food, feathers, toys, and of course, their droppings. How many birds do you have in total, and what kind of birds are they? I have a total of 14 birds. 8 of those are budgies, including Mango, and 6 of those are zebra finches. What are some problems with colony breeding? Colony breeding with budgies can be insanely difficult. It may not sound like it, but female budgies can get very aggressive to the point of hurting other birds. We've gone through a couple of breeding seasons worth of it, and you have to pay close attention. If you plan on doing this, I recommend giving the birds plenty of space and more than enough nesting boxes. Females show aggression towards others when they want something that isn't theirs, such as a box, and will do anything they can to get it. In my opinion, it's best to breed just one pair of budgies at a time or to separate the budgies into different cages. This prevents the birds from interfering with each other and can help you as the owner care for the specific needs of the birds. We found that it's the best way to breed too. Next up is, what other bird species can peacefully live with budgies? Quite a few other bird species can live with budgies, and the most popular of those are finches, cockatiels, canaries, and various other small parrots. Based on budgie behavior when breeding though, try to stay away from introducing nesting boxes in a communal aviary or birdcage. And this is just another reminder to do your homework before getting a new species. How can I introduce a new budgie to an existing budgie in my household? To introduce a new budgie to one that you already have, put them in a separate cage near one another so that they'll get used to each other. Alternatively, you may put them in the same cage, but keep in mind that you should be present and watch them for the first day or two. If for whatever reason they fight, keep the birds separate until they get used to living with you. Okay, how can I train my budgie to do tricks or interact with me? If you plan on befriending your budgie, allow it to settle in first. My family and I have had the best success by getting a treat like spray millet and approaching the birds slowly. By showing them that you have food, they'll get the idea that maybe you aren't a predator. Avoid grabbing them or slamming their cage doors to keep their trust. Training a baby or a young bird will often have better results, and Mango is a great example of this. By raising him and acclimating him to our environment, he always knows what to expect. That's why in some videos you may see me rubbing his head or lightly grabbing him. What state or country do you live in, and do you like living there? I won't be getting too specific on this one obviously, but I live on the west coast of the US. And yes, I do like living here. What is your least favorite thing about bird maintenance? My least favorite thing about bird maintenance would have to be cleaning up after all of Mango's down feathers. Birds have these small down feathers underneath their normal feathers that keep them warm. When they lose them, the down feathers go everywhere and stick to literally everything. Here you can see part of Mango's cage that has a bunch of them stuck on the wires. It can be a struggle because you have to pluck them off one by one. If anybody has a method that can clean these off easier, please let me know in the comments. When did you start getting into animals and plants? I've always loved plants and animals ever since I was little. It began with animals though, and one of my favorite hobbies was researching the lizards in our backyard. With the plant hobby, that came to me more recently, last year I believe, when I realized how fun and amazing plants are to grow. Okay, last question. What are some tips for balancing schoolwork and pet care? A few tips for balancing schoolwork and pet care no matter what level of school you're in are 1. Don't overwhelm yourself with a bunch of tasks at once. For example, if you have multiple pets and they're all due for a cage clean, don't do it all in one day. Go home, finish your homework, and then do a task or two that relates to your pets. 2. Create a routine. Not an elaborate one, but just something that will stop you from forgetting. I like to use this small planner here, which has a mix of my homework and my pet care tasks, which I've been using every day. Alright, that will be the end of this Q&A. If you have any more questions, I will try to answer as many as I can in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.